Breaking news this morning, there is chaos right now in Los Angeles as violent protests and riots breaking out in opposition of ICE raids carried out by those teams there. Of course, this is all for President Trump's promise to the American people when it comes to illegal immigration. Over 2,000 protesters were seen on the 101 freeway waving Mexican flags and lighting Waymo cars on fire. At least 27 people were arrested yesterday. President Trump posted this on Truth Social. Los Angeles has been, quote, invaded and occupied by illegal aliens and criminals. He ordered Homeland Security officials to take action to liberate the city from illegals. Here's the president yesterday.
What is the bar for sending Marines?
What I think it is, I mean, if we see danger to our country and to our citizens, we'll be very, very strong in terms of law and order. It's about law and order.
Marines on the table, sir. Secretary,
we got to see what we need. We'll send whatever we need to make sure there's law and order.
But California Democrats remaining defiant, doing everything they can to shift blame from themselves to the president. Here's L.A. Mayor Karen Bass.
What we're seeing in L.A. is chaos caused by the administration. People should exercise their right to protest. That's their First Amendment right. But people should also exercise that right peacefully. We do not want to play into the administration's hands. We're working with officials, we're organizing resources, but what we're seeing in Los Angeles is chaos that is provoked by the administration.
Governor Gavin Newsom wasting no time referring to the president as a dictator on X. He's also set to sue the administration today while demanding the president rescind what he calls the unlawful deployment of troops into Los Angeles. Again, saying there was a problem. There was no problem, until Donald Trump got involved. The president also posting this on Truth Social. Governor Newsom and Mayor Bass should apologize to Angelenos for what has happened, saying, quote, these are not protesters, they're troublemakers and insurrectionists. Liz, there was also unrest in New York City over the weekend, activists encouraging more rioting. And, the Wall Street Journal writes, here we go, the deportation war begins. That is the editorial board this morning. They say Trump's got a mandate, but obviously there might be some trouble ahead.
Yeah, he does have a mandate. I mean, polling shows that the majority of Americans actually want to deport. 97% want to deport people who are here illegally and who have committed violent crimes. Over half want to deport anyone who's committed any crime. So, look, I think this is sort of, we've gone from defund the police to now block ICE. This is a sort of defund the police part 2, and they have similar origins, Cheryl. The origin being basically a distaste for law and order, which is the kind of activity that Donald Trump promised Americans when he got elected. So he is following through on his commitment. I think what's unfortunate here is that you have a California governor who wants to run for president. Right now, the best credential you can have for winning the Democratic nomination in 2028 is that you can stand up to Donald Trump. So there's everything. Gavin Newsom has every ambition and every impulse to basically block what President Trump is trying to do, even if it hurts his state, which is what it's doing right now.
Well, and of course, you mentioned the race for the political office, highest job in the nation. Well, that's Gavin Newsom right now, and that may be motivating a lot of what he's doing or not doing. To be clear, speaking of running for president, former Vice President Kamala Harris, who could be running for California governor, she's getting slammed for her response to these riots. Here's her statement on X. She puts the blame solely on the Trump administration, says the deployment of the National Guard is a, quote, dangerous escalation meant to provoke chaos. And then she goes on to call the administration's action as cruel and calculated. But listen to this. Vice President J.D. Vance commented on the unrest and the Biden administration's role. He says one of the main technical issues in the immigration judicial battles is whether Biden's border crisis counted as a, quote, invasion. So now we have foreign nationals with no legal right to be in the country waving foreign flags and assaulting law enforcement. If only we had a good word for that. So you can see that they're starting to lay out their reasoning for not only calling in the National Guard, but then you also had Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth talking about Marines being on standby at Camp Pendleton. So that incited the flames even more.
Well, look, it's clear Karen Bass has no control over city. We saw that from the LA fires, right? These are grossly incompetent politicians. And remember, Gavin Newsom will lock you up and throw away the key. He'll shut down your operation if you don't wear a mask, as he did to small Christian schools all over the state. If you're on the beach, you're going to get arrested, but it's okay to throw bricks off an overpass and call it mostly peaceful at police cars, like set Waymo cars on fire left and right. These protests are obviously organized by some left-wing group somewhere with ties to who knows who. But look, this is not 5 years ago. This is not the summer of love. You're not protesting against police brutality, which even though people don't like those, the protests and the carnage that occurred after George Floyd, I think most people agree that police brutality is bad. Okay, here, it's much worse than the polls that you mentioned. Last summer, 62% in a Pew poll said they wanted every single illegal immigrant gone. 62% want every single one, regardless of criminality. Okay, and what you have here are people that are actively obstructing federal agents trying to do their job. They're going after violent criminals, and you have people trying to obstruct that, and then Gavin Newsom blaming the Trump administration for trying to deport illegal criminals out of our country.
Liz, here's my question, though, is that do the Democrats not remember the backlash from the 2020 George Floyd protest? They're doing it again.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's amazing to me. You're doubling down on the kind of images that you're seeing on the screen. And the 2020 George Floyd protest completely went against them. And this, again, sanctuary cities.
100%. And look at the people they continue to defend, right? We have them going to El Salvador to visit with what appears to be a gangbanger who's now been brought back. These are their heroes, Cheryl, and it is totally embarrassing. But meanwhile, unfortunately, what we have here is, as Mike alluded to, left-wing activist groups funding these organizations, funding these protests. But the Democrats' reaction this morning is, oh, my gosh, this picture of a person waving a Mexican flag, that is absolute fodder for President Trump. And they're right. That looks pretty bad to me. And I think it's going to look pretty bad to an awful lot of the country.
And we don't know who is funding, in particular, when it comes to L.A. or New York City over the weekend, but that we have seen that in the past. And that is a very good point to make, that, this is a bigger political movement than just a riot that you're seeing day of in California. It's a bigger story. We are just getting started this morning.